Good evening. I am here with Christopher Jadoch, the president of the State Council from 2017 to 2018. Chris, when you joined the State Council, were you a staff member, a student, a resident, manager, or clinical coordinator? How did you start out?
Actually, I started out at Winship at the Western New York level. One of the past presidents, Patty Ciola, had mentioned that the Western New York chapter was looking for, and I think the time that the position was called a Director of Governmental Affairs. What I had done was originally I went to pharmacy school, went on to law school. I worked as a pharmacist all through law school, and actually while I was practicing law. I practiced law full time for 7 years and then wound up making the decision to come back into the practice of pharmacy. So I worked at Sisters Hospital, and actually it was must have been 98, 99, Y2K. And at the time they needed a to convert to a Y2K compliant system, computer system. So I was started at Sisters for that project, and so Patty Ciola had known that of my interest in law and such, and I thought it'd be a good opportunity to look at the governmental affairs, lobbying, and such. And so that's how I got first involved indirectly through Winship, and then that had evolved over the years. I'd served as president of the Western Europe chapter, always interested in the lobbying aspects. And I believe my first formal introduction to the NISHIP board was with regard to being asked to serve on the annual assembly planning committee, which I think it was at the Turning Stone Casino was the first board meeting I had attended. And then did some work with the council, but then I'd was asked to take a position for as the vice president, and I think of public policy was the term at that time. Wound
Okay.
up serving, yeah, two-year terms. Um, I can't remember who I succeeded. Who was before me? Was it Gina? Um, yeah, but
Um,
nevertheless, yeah. So that was the first. It was 2 terms as vice president of public
okay.
policy, and then was asked to consider the president position.
Right.
Um, but that at the time I was at a difficult time. I was at DeUville School of Pharmacy and was had to invest some work and time because I was coming up for promotion and tenure and had to invest some time in that. But then I was asked, I think, uh, at least twice, maybe 2 or 3 times, and then it was a better time for me professionally, and thought it would be an honor to to serve the council as president. So
Okay. How many of the, you mentioned one of them, Patty Ciola. How many of the previous past presidents did you know and what were they like?
at what point?
As far back as you can remember. Again, some of the early ones, like
Mhm.
you might have done Jack Catrinos
Yep,
or
I knew Jack, and actually, in reality, I knew many of the past presidents. Many of them had completed their PharmD here in Buffalo. So in their I would say their professional infancy, John Manzo, uh, um, Tom Lombardi, Kim Zamet, um, Mark Sinnott. So when I was in the undergrad, at the time it was the 5-year pharmacy degree program. Many of them were in the PharmD program or had been working at Buffalo General. I did a lot of my actually 2 of my 3 rotations where I did a longitudinal clinical and hospital operations. So I got to know many of them then, and Kim Zamet just from Winship. And so, yeah, I was very fortunate to have a familiarity with some really key people. Bruce Pleskow, being from the area here, I'd see him at Winship, and among others. But yeah, Jack Katrinos as well. Um, Patty Ciola, obviously, was influential. So,
What challenges did you see as a member, as a board member, and then as president of the organization?
let's see. As a member, it was just frustrating to see how much we could do as a profession, in the council, and that more people weren't on board becoming members. It like what is it? Many hands make light work, things like that.
Mhm.
And but in a sense, it was frustrating, but it never dissuaded me from doing what I did. For me, it was fortunate when I went to academia because part of that community service, part of being the council, I think was part of my job description. I was serving the profession, the community, and academia supported that. So it allowed me to spend, I guess, more time, and I could see the challenges of other members, board members, officers, um, having a full-time job that wasn't as supportive. I mean, they still needed to be there where at least when I was at Duville, I could spend some of my working time preparing reports, things like, the advocacy reports and lobbying, and, you know, going to lobby day was greatly supported with bringing my students, and even before that, the challenges as when I was before I went into academia, being a director at one of the community hospitals, I would find that I'd have to take personal time off, vacation time, to attend lobby day and other things like that, board meetings. And I also always preferred the in-person board meetings. I mean, I've had countless trips across New York State from Buffalo to Albany, and many of them, probably most of them, were with Stephanie Seiss and other board members. But Stephanie and I, you know, uh, I think between the two of us, we've probably been on well, she's obviously been on board the longest, but many trips with her and many other board members from Western. So, but yeah, I always found the great value in the camaraderie, the building good professional working relationships with being able to spend that time. And actually early on, we would oftentimes get to Albany the night before, have dinner and then have the board meeting the following day. And just over the years, that's ratcheted down. And so those are, I guess, I'm integrating some of those challenges.
Okay,
Challenges of being a board member um, is trying to be able to get everything done. Um, you know,
okay,
it, we were always so ambitious, and um, it's difficult to, we have the plans, we have the board decisions and stuff, but to be able to follow through. And it was difficult to grab someone by the lapels and say, why aren't you doing your part? We were all volunteers, and we all had different commitments, but everyone still, at least most of them, had the passion of being there because they wanted to be there, not because they wanted a title to be a board member or officer. And then, likewise, being president, um, the challenges of having less than ideal participation. Um,
okay. Now, you mentioned the board meetings. How often did they meet? Were they very organized? Were they very professional? Or was it a
yeah,
lot of more camaraderie?
well, no, it was very professional, but still in between time, and even just, some of the uh, you'd have the friendly banter, being on the board with Joe Pinto, and you know and Stephanie Seiss, the whole Buffalo downstate thing, and it was very enjoyable, put it that way. But yeah, we would meet, I think, in person. At one point, it may have been up to 6 times a year. Then we went down to 4, and then eventually, we got down to the virtual meetings, and um, but I'm sorry. What else was the other question?
No, again, it just that how often did they meet? I think you've covered most of all of this.
Yeah,
Again, you sure you haven't seen my questions?
no, I haven't.
Because you keep flowing from one to the other, which is good. Good.
Yeah. But
Were
one of
there
the other
any?
things going back to, I just want to say is, for me, it was always important, even though others may have not contributed or weren't able to contribute as much, I always wanted to give my best effort and always saw it as, you know, uh, benefiting the community, the pharmacy, the professional community. So if I was able to do that and present comprehensive reports and do the lobbying and go to some of the PAC functions, um, and although it was for the benefit of the council members, but I always saw myself as, the entire profession is benefiting from it. So,
Were there any major mishaps or issues when you were president, which would be useful for future presidents not to repeat?
um, mishaps, well, we did have some board members who um, may have been some of the, well, I can't say that they weren't in it for the passionate, because we had some board members that were very productive during my presidency, and one was the vice president of public policy, and I'm not sure if that's what we called it then. But just from a personality point, there were 2 board members who just were very, very productive, very proliferate in the contributions to the council, but they just rubbed everyone else, the entire board, the wrong way. And actually did have a conversation with one of those board members uh, with regard to that, with that issue at the annual assembly. I had a chance to talk with her and just mention that. Not that it really helped anything, but as being uh, the presidential leader of the organization, I felt compelled to share that with them, and part of it is a counseling point, for their own um, benefit as well. So.
Now, you mentioned the annual assembly a couple of times, so let's
Mhm.
talk a little bit about that. When you became a member, what were the early annual assemblies like and where were they held? So when you first became a member.
Let's see, first became a member Turning Stone, and was very rare, but most of them were at the Sagamore. So yeah. And but one of the things that I brought up in coming up in the ranks, was that I did not like to see the um I don't know, how do I describe it? What's the word for it? Is to there was too much clickiness with the board, the council board, and I understand, knowing a lot of the people, Bruce and Kim and Lee, but when you're not on the inside circle and there's inside jokes being made to the room, whether it's at an installation dinner or a house of delegates, it just, I didn't think that was a good way to make new members, young members, you know, feel included. If anything, they were felt excluded. And I felt that way as well, the inside jokes that were being made publicly, and so I know one of the things that uh, I had requested our board, even at the Winship level, and at times when we're here locally for CE programs, the board members, we did not sit together. I insisted that we would sit amongst students and new members and such, to try to integrate new people and new members and get to know them and such. So that was probably one of the observations that I had and was able to address it, I think, at least sometimes through the years.
When you were president,
Mm-hmm.
when you were at the annual assembly, was it very busy, chaotic, or sedate, in your opinion?
For myself personally,
Yes.
it was no, it was, I guess it was sedate. I mean, there's a lot of, you're going from sedate to chaotic, something in between. I mean, I had some responsibilities, some speeches and places to be, but it wasn't, there wasn't a lot of, I didn't feel that there was a lot of pressure on me as the incoming president. So,
Okay. When you became the president, was it
mhm.
everything you expected?
Yeah. Yeah, being on the board for a number of years, I don't think there were really any surprises. Um, and just years of experience, that sometimes there's bumps in the road, things here and there. Um, as I said, there was some, I said, difficulties with two of the board members. But no, there were no big surprises.
Okay. Generational changes. When you started, did you feel you needed to work your way up to the presidency? Now, new members have a very different philosophy of needing more evenly divided time between work and play.
Hmm.
How do we help them assume these roles in the state council? And will the new members be able to move the council forward?
Yeah, definitely, and I know this has been on track recently, is to lay out the expectations ahead of time. The expectations, I believe, are less. Um, I don't think the, the board or the council expects as much as we had in the past. Certainly, time commitments, and it's been very accommodating um, to the new generation. But I know, my fear is that some of them are just wanting to take roles for that title, to build a resume and such. So how can we help that? I guess I'd say uh, lay out the expectations. I think it's important for succession planning, which I know, being on the nominations committee several times over the years, is something that we try to build, but it's difficult. Um, and it's uh, that networking, I think, is very important, and I wish we would have better opportunities to network across the state, but it really gets limited to the annual assembly, local CE programs, where some of the programming in years past, as I was coming up, we had, there were several leadership meetings that I had been invited to and been fortunate to be part of, that the council would sponsor. If I recall, it was over the winter. It may have been at different times where the council would invite some people who they identified as potential and future leaders in the organization, and we'd have some programming. And if I recall, there was like at least two or three of those when I was probably at the uh, chapter level, that I was invited and participated in those types of things where you'd get to know people better and it was less siloed, where we'd have that opportunity to, connect.
What would be your favorite moment of being president, if you have one or
Well,
two?
I think the biggest success was that we were able to get the intern immunizer passed that year. Otherwise, the presidential year wasn't really that. I mean, there were no real big significant things, but to me, that was nice. Actually wound up getting the sheepskin, where you get the print of the bill, and actually gave it to Andrew Kaplan, because he was our vice president of public policy. I can't remember if that was his term at the time, since we've changed that title. But and Andrew, he's one of the ones that was a difficult board member, but nevertheless, he had worked on that. It was under his tutelage, and he had deserved that. So I know at the annual assembly, I presented him with a framed copy of that, and the other one I framed and left at Duville School of Pharmacy, because our students, among many others, had participated in making that success. And as you know, advocacy takes time.
Any final parting nuggets you wish to give to future members who wish to become president?
It's very much an honor and a privilege, to be able to have that role, and to work with some really great current, former board members, past presidents. The support is there. We just have to reach out for it. But also, I'd say that make sure you earmark some time, because that is a time commitment, and you can always do more. And I guess in my one regret is I wish I could have done more. It's always like that laundry list. You wish you could have done more things, better things. But yeah, and that was one thing for me. I had to line up and make sure I had the support of the school, the administration, and fortunately they never balked at the time commitment. But we also have to be realistic. I didn't abuse it as well. But and I do feel it's important to come up through the ranks. I never was seeking titles, just personally. To me, it was that initial position at the Winship level of governmental affairs was for me the opportunity to serve the profession and to make it better for all of us. And then as I guess you do things, if people recognize that you're able to get things done, you've had some success, we take things to the next level. But it wasn't anything I was actively seeking. And when I was able to take the vice president of public policy, it was for me it was a natural progression to be able to take it from the chapter level to the state level. And then the other thing, during the presidency, I didn't normally attend the ASHP summer meeting, but it was an honor to serve as a delegate in the House of Delegates and represent our state at the House of Delegates. To see participating so many at the state level, to be able to have our voice at the national level was very rewarding.
With that, we'll conclude the session.